also think there's a lot of other territory that is yet to be explored when it comes to like, okay, let's have a conversation about health here instead of weight loss, which they're not mutually exclusive. Yes, they're interconnected at some points, but your weight loss doesn't tell the whole story of your health journey. So,
I'm Riley Reese. This is the Sophia Unfiltered podcast where we bring together thought leaders, wellness entrepreneurs, makers, and emerging health leaders. We're here to have raw, unfiltered conversations because sharing your stories has the power to change lives, help others heal, and transform the way we take care of ourselves. Here we go. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Sophia Unfiltered, the show where we ditch the polished narratives and get real about healing, self-care, and transformation. And today we're diving into a big one: weight, wellness, and the rise of weight loss meds. But we're coming at it differently because here's the thing: health doesn't start with the scale. It starts with your habits, your relationship with your body, and your ability to build a lifestyle that actually supports your well being. So today we're pulling back the curtain on size inclusivity, the realities of these medicines, and how we should shift the conversation from weight loss to sustainable healing. And joining us here on this conversation is Melyssa Allen. She's a double board certified lifestyle medicine professional and a health and wellness coach with over 15 years of experience. Melissa, thank you so much for being here.
yeah, thanks so much, Riley. I'm happy to have this conversation.
Yeah, what is going on? Everybody is talking about weight loss, whether
Oh,
it's
man.
meds or social movements like body positivity. I just want to discuss this narrative that we're being sold. Hey, lose weight and get healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we know that being overweight or obese is a risk factor to our health, but there's so much of an emphasis on quote unquote health looking a certain way. Usually, when we think of someone healthy, we're typically going to think of someone that's in a smaller body, someone that is thin, right? We hear all of the catchphrases in marketing that talk about like skinny this, skinny that. And ultimately, it's really about the behaviors that we're engaging in that determine whether we're healthy or not. And there's so many labels around our bodies and our health status correlated to the size of our bodies. But sometimes it's missing a pretty big component behind the scenes of what are these people actually doing to promote their health? Because there could be people in bigger bodies that have healthier habits than people in smaller bodies. So we definitely have this weight bias in our society to think that skinny equals healthier and fatter equals unhealthier. And that's just not the story.
Do you know where this came from?
I mean, I think it's just been embedded in so many of the marketing ads that are geared towards our insecurities. And for some reason, we are living in the day and age in which, like, if you have an ounce of body fat on you and something wiggles and jiggles in your body, that it's not healthy. And yeah, I know we all have wiggles and jiggles, and that's perfectly fine. But there's been such a strong emphasis on fat equals bad. And we hear it oftentimes in our food marketing, whether it's junk food or fatty foods, good fats, bad fats. Like we have all of that kind of judgment around these things related to our health. But if you look back in history, there are times where people who were curvier and fuller figure were actually looked at as more beautiful, maybe not healthier, but that idea of beauty has definitely been shaped by societal standards and weight bias.
Yeah, that's amazing. I don't know how we're going to get back to that with what's being sold to us right now. It's sad that it's like a marketing ploy, but we do know that you can improve actual health, right? Your blood pressure, cholesterol, mental health without actually losing a pound. Is that right?
Yeah, because ultimately, the number on the scale is just how much gravity is pulling our bodies down towards the earth, right? It doesn't actually tell the whole story about our body composition. And so, even things like BMI is really outdated. Using the scale is a part of the story of health, but it's not the whole story. And so much of our healthcare system relies so strongly on that number and BMI to determine our health status when we actually have other measures that are more accurate, things like waist to hip ratio, our percent body fat, and our skeletal muscle mass that can be calculated through different devices. And it's just so much more of an accurate measure of health than a lot of the things that we've been conditioned to use over time.
What do you think true health actually looks like?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, it doesn't look like a specific body type, that's for sure. And given my training in lifestyle medicine, and I'll define that really quickly for your audience
Yeah,
because it
please.
may be the first time that they've heard that term before, but it's actually a subspecialty of the medicine field that focuses on using our lifestyle behaviors on a more therapeutic intervention level. So when we think of medicine, we have like this spectrum of care, right? To where if you are, on the verge of having a heart attack and hypertension and things like that, you might need to take a bit more of an intensive approach to changing your behaviors to address the root cause of those diseases versus someone like me. I may have a couple different risk factors, but if I don't change something tomorrow, I'm not at risk of death from those types of conditions. So, lifestyle medicine really gets at the root cause of some of these lifestyle related chronic diseases that we see, like obesity, type 2 diabetes, hypertension, cardiovascular disease, and even certain types of cancers. So, lifestyle medicine focuses on six main pillars of health. Obviously, we have physical activity. Nutrition is a big one too. It focuses on a mostly whole food, plant based lifestyle, not going vegan or vegetarian, but just eating more plants. Then we have stress management, healthy sleep habits, positive social connections, and reduction or elimination of risky substance use like tobacco, vaping, and alcohol. So to me, the true pillar of health is someone who is engaging in, if not all, a majority of those behaviors that are really promoting their health instead of feeding disease. And so to me, it would be a lot more about seeing what's behind the scenes of a person's life instead of just looking at the body that's in front of me.
I love that. So, why do you think we're outsourcing a lot of our health then to medications without addressing these root causes?
Oh man, because our healthcare system is definitely broken. I don't think that's a secret from anyone right now. We've been doing a fee for service model for so long, and our healthcare providers, unfortunately, when they're taking insurance, they're limited by like a 15-minute window with someone. And that's not a lot of time to ask about what their exercise habits look like. What are they eating regularly? Are they stressed at work? Like, because they have all these other boxes that they have to check during those 15 minutes. So that's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about lifestyle medicine is because they're ultimately focused on the goal of health restoration versus the way that our current healthcare system is right now, which is disease management. We are shelling out pills for all the different symptoms of all these different diseases and not correctly or effectively addressing the root cause, which is our lifestyle behaviors. So, if you get someone coming to you that's saying they're having difficulty sleeping, they get prescribed a pill. Here you go. Here's an Ambien prescription to help you sleep. Then what happens? Ambien causes other side effects, and then they get more pills to treat those side effects, and it just becomes this vicious cycle. So, it really has a lot to do with this total overhaul of how our healthcare system operates, trying to switch to a more value based care system versus the traditional fee for service that we've had. And it's so much more complex than that, too. But a lot of
Right.
times, providers also don't get the training that they need in medical school to effectively have these types of conversations to coach people in behavior change. Up until very recently, medical school training really only had like 2 hours of a lecture in nutrition for patients. And now there's lots of initiatives in culinary medicine, which is really looking at how we can use food as medicine. The American College of Sports Medicine has the Exercise is Medicine initiative, where they're trying to educate fitness professionals and healthcare providers on how to effectively prescribe exercise. So there's lots of these initiatives that are starting to rise and emerge, but it's a slow, steady process of change for the system in its entirety. All of those behaviors are interconnected, right? Like when you're exercising more, you're probably going to sleep better at night. You're more likely to, eat the lunch that you packed for yourself instead of grabbing fast food. Like it just kind of creates this upward spiral of positive momentum.
Yeah,
So
versus the downward spiral. Yeah, drinking, hangovers, poor food choices, increased stress.
did want to address because some people might hear the term lifestyle medicine and be like, "Oh, they're anti-pharmaceutical or anti-drug or whatever." And like that's not the case. It's just we are in a society that's very overprescribed, and so lifestyle medicine helps to shift the conversation to focus more on addressing that root cause with those pharmaceuticals coming in conjunction with it. So, just wanted to throw that in there while I was thinking about it.
Yeah, yeah, that's really smart. Like, a lot of these words are new, and some people
Yeah.
could have never heard of this before, so thank you for sharing that with our listeners. It sounds like as far as outsourcing our health to medications, the fee-for-service model has been this way for so long that we're just programmed automatically to go in, "Yep, prescription," and go.
Okay, so the providers are also frustrated too, and many of them are actually leaving to do more concierge medicine because we have a pandemic of burnout within the medical community as well, just because there's that lack of job satisfaction from actually seeing their patients heal. I once coached a cardiologist that shared with me he was struggling because he's like, I do this heart surgery to fix up this patient, and then I see him back again 3 years later because nothing changed in the way that he was living. So, it's definitely not only for the patient, well-being, but also the provider well-being too.
Yeah, we're starting to see a lot of the providers, nurses, and physicians as well come to our Sophia platform. I think just to share that coaching part that they really want to heal. So shifting the focus from weight to behaviors, right?
Yeah.
Why size inclusivity? Why does this matter? Right?
Yeah, because people are very insecure about how their bodies look, regardless of the shape and size. Everyone has, just that little bit of body dysmorphia when it comes to, how we're looking at ourselves. And especially if you're about to embark on a healthy lifestyle journey, if you are only using your weight as a measure of progress, there's a very strong chance that you will feel defeated very quickly and give up. And again, it's just going to cycle through. And that's why so many of these trends and fads have that yo yo effect, right? Because people will try something that is either extreme or like a very rigid program, and it sucks the joy out of these behaviors because you have to stick to the plan. And what ends up happening is that people do get these quick fixes, but they're short term. They're very short lived. And if you're using weight as your measure of health or your measure of success, we fluctuate daily. So there could be one day where you were like the pillars of lifestyle medicine to a supreme, but you go and step on the scale the next day and you maybe see an increase in 3 pounds. And you're like, what is going on? I did so good yesterday. So having weight as more of an outcome focused goal that's long term, I encourage patients to do that, clients to do that. If weight loss is something they desire, I'm not going to discourage it. However, when it comes to their goal setting, you really have to get down to, well, what behaviors are going to help you achieve that weight loss? Because that's where your power lies. You get to control your actions, your choices, your behaviors. You don't have a whole lot of control over your weight because it's so multifaceted and complex in what elevates your weight, what decreases your weight. And even when you're getting more physically active, you could be burning fat and gaining muscle, and that scale might not move, or worse, it may go up, and you're like, "What's going on? I've never been exercising more in my
You're
life."
stronger. That's what happened.
And that's the thing is like 1 pound of fat and 1 pound of muscle weigh the exact same. They're both 1 pound, but their densities are different, right? So when we're building muscle, it's a lot more lean, you're more toned, whereas fat takes up more space. So that 1 pound of fat is a little bit denser than that 1 pound of muscle. And again, if you are only using the scale, you're likely to feel discouraged and defeated when you see that number going up. Whereas if you're focused on your behaviors, you'll know, hey, I crushed a workout yesterday and I PR'd on my bench press. Like that was huge. So those non-scale victories and those more what we call process goals that are behavior and action oriented, that's the secret sauce in being able to achieve that long-term sustainable weight loss.
So it sounds like you're trying to, like you mentioned earlier, have people unlearn what we've kind of been
Oh
programmed,
yeah.
right? When it comes to behavior, trying to be more important than body size.
Yeah, absolutely. And the great thing is, since that information was learned over time, we have the ability to unlearn it and learn something new in place of it. The problem is you gotta be patient with the process, and you really have to be mindful about some of these stories that we tell ourselves where, "Oh, I wanna look like I did in high school." And it's like, "Well, why?" Like, what was so important about that back then? And that's when, as a coach, you can start to peel some of those layers back because maybe that's when they felt their most confident. Maybe that's when their performance in school was, like, at its peak. And so when you can identify more of what's the driving values, the importance behind what that image that they strive to achieve looks like, then you can start to shift that narrative and be like, okay, so it sounds like you want to feel strong and confident and be like at the peak of your performance. Tell me a little bit about what that's going to look like for where you're starting now and what kinds of actions are going to help support that future vision of yourself, not the one from the past, like this new version of yourself that also desires to feel strong and empowered and things like that. So, I think that's a little bit it takes some time to rewrite those stories and to even pay attention when some of that negative self-talk comes up in the first place. We really have to also build our mental muscles on this journey to be aware of those thoughts as they come up and catch them, then choose or change the thought into something more helpful.
I was about to say this sounds a lot more like mental health and that coaching aspect than the actual weight loss piece of this at all. Is that how lifestyle medicine helps rewrite the narrative when it comes to these weight stigmas?
Yeah, because lifestyle medicine does ultimately focus on your behaviors as that measure of health. Obviously, if you go to a provider, they're going to take your biometrics, but ultimately, we are setting goals around the behaviors that you're engaging in. And yeah, a lot of this has to do with our mindset about the journey and learning how to pay attention to those positives as they come up, where if you got yourself to the gym on a day that you really didn't want to go, like you were trying to make every excuse in the book and talk yourself out of it, and you still showed up, you have to learn how to celebrate that step too, in addition to every setback. And having that focus on the lifestyle medicine behaviors is a really great way to do that because if you start tracking and you're only eating like an average of one fruit or vegetable a day for the week, and then you start bumping it up to 3 servings per day for the week, like, that's a huge improvement, and you'll start to notice some of those other non-scale victories too. You're sleeping better, you have more energy, you're able to better effectively handle the stress that's in your life, you're maybe less irritable for the people that you love that are in your life. So there's all of these other factors that combine together, again, just to create that upward spiral of positive momentum.
Yes, it sounds like we don't need to really lose weight to earn health. We need to build the habits to support it.
Yeah, and then the weight loss can be like a cool side effect if that's still something that you have a really burning desire for. But I have had patients and clients in the past that ultimately just like ditch the scale. I don't own a scale anymore. So, I'll take my waist to hip ratio maybe once every other month. But yeah, I don't have a scale anymore. And it's so liberating to not feel like a slave to those check ins every day where you have to go and see, is it gonna ruin my day or is it gonna make my day? Like, to have the freedom from that has just been a game changer.
So, with everything going on right now, we're seeing this weight loss obsession again,
Mhm.
right? And
Yeah.
this drug boom. Why are all of these drugs just exploding in popularity?
A lot of it has to do with the marketing again. I mean, when we look at the origin of these medications, it was meant to treat things like diabetes.
Right.
And they end up getting rebranded into like, "Oh my gosh, look, as these people were healing from their diabetes, they also lost all this weight. So now let's market it as a weight loss drug and do an off-brand label or something like that." So that way it's geared towards 2 different markets, even though it has ultimately the same purpose. And people do love those instant results and those quick results. So when we see these success stories. And let me just say, there ain't no shame in that GLP-1 game, y'all. Like, if that it feels like the best route for you between conversations with you and your provider, like, you do you. But I also think there's a lot of other territory that is yet to be explored when it comes to, like, okay, let's have a conversation about health here instead of weight loss, which they're not mutually exclusive. Yes, they're interconnected at some points, but your weight loss doesn't tell the whole story of your health journey. So I know there's been a couple anecdotal accounts that I've heard of people who didn't get any sort of guidance from their providers after they were prescribed these medications for increasing their physical activity and changing their diets. It was just more of like a here you go, here's your prescription. And that's not how those meds are meant to be used either. They're meant to be used in conjunction with lifestyle medicine behaviors like physical activity and nutrition and sleep and stress management, like all of that coming together. So again, coming back to the fact that we live in a society right now that is very overprescribed. When we think about kind of how our brains are changing too, especially as it relates to our smartphone usage and social media, like we want that instant gratification. And since so many of us grew up in a society where weight loss was the goal, seeing how quickly it can happen for people is going to make you more inclined to want to explore that as an option for yourself too. And I think it's just come up way too quickly. The peer-reviewed studies, like, they're kind of there, but they're just starting to come out. So I also think there's a lot more that we need to learn about the long-term effects of these medications. And something that we have seen in some of the studies is some of the weight loss is actually associated with muscle loss and losing that muscle mass versus actual fat loss too. So that's something to take into consideration because especially for women as we age, we have to be really careful about our bone health. And strength training is one of the things that helps us to keep our bones strong and prevent osteoporosis. And so if we're trying to swap out our strength and resistance training with this drug instead, just because we're focused on losing the weight, that's ultimately not going to be the best choice for our health. So we definitely need to have more conversations, more research about it, and ultimately just ask yourself, like, why is this weight loss so important to me? And what are the pros and cons of either choosing this route of medication or not? And again, making sure to have those types of conversations with your medical providers too.
But like you mentioned earlier, a lot of your clients or patients that come to you, it's not just about the weight loss itself, it's about that picture of their own personal narrative. So there was so much more behind just losing the weight. So the issue becomes, right, the meds can't replace self-trust, they can't replace the habit change, and they can't replace that healthy relationship with the food. Like what really happens when you medicate the symptom instead of the system? Like anybody can look at this and see you didn't change the narrative, you didn't build any healthy habits to sustain this. We're not pros on GLP-1s by any means, but
Yeah, and it's something important to consider too, because I have had a couple clients that tried it, didn't like how it worked because it made them feel sick. Like when they were around food, it like kind of made them nauseous too. So they were like, I love food. I enjoy food. And this is just robbing me of that. And that's, one of the reasons that they find people like me and coaches like me because, oh, actually, I did forget to mention, I wrote a book called Healthy Living Doesn't Have to Suck. It's the key phrase that I use in my life and with my coaching. But yeah, with those clients, they just didn't like the way that it turned their life into just kind of this gross feeling around something that brings them joy. And another client was oh gosh, I felt so bad because I know this would have been a huge setback for me too, but she had been really proud of like her movement goals and she was more physically active than she's ever been in her life. She had just started learning how to like piece apart that weight versus health. And she went home around like her in-laws and her family, and they were all on it. Like all the women, her cousins, her mother-in-law, sister-in-law, like they were all on it. And first of all, that stuff is not cheap either. And a lot of times it's not covered by insurance. So there's that factor. But then she was like, I was made to feel less than because everyone else was on it and they were bragging about their weight loss. And they just kinda turned up their nose when she was trying to brag about how much more physically active she's been, especially as a new mom, and it was just oh, it was a nightmare scenario, and she's recovering from that, but my heart just sank for the fact that
Yes.
as collectively, as women, that we still find ourselves in those types of scenarios where we're shaming and judging other people for the way that they look and what they're doing versus what they're not doing.
But it just seems to be this obsession with the weight loss obsession is happening, the Ozempic boom is happening.
And it's such a hard battle to fight because it goes against the cultural norms that we have here in America. And we have all the prescription medication commercials thrown in our face like every other commercial, whereas you don't find that in other countries. And so that's something that we're up against too, is trying to fight to tune out that noise and just focus on staying in our lane while having those continued conversations with our healthcare providers, our coaches, and ultimately, like, what does health mean to you too? Like, what would your healthiest version of yourself look like? And once you have that vision, like, how do we get there? Because yeah, with these GLP-1 meds, like, if you are on it, you have to stay on it for a long time and then slowly wean yourself off. And even if you're able to get off of the med, it's not promised that those results are going to stay too. So then what happens when you find yourself back at that starting point that you had, or worse, higher than where you were at? If we can just learn how to create some space between ourselves and our weight and the worth that we tie to it, the importance behind it, and instead start to tell ourselves that new story about, like, my weight is not my worth, and my weight is not my health. It's not my whole picture of health. It's only part of the story. What's more important is what I'm doing for myself on a daily basis, on a routine week. Like, of course, every day is going to be different, but in the grand scheme of things, on average, what kinds of healthy behaviors are you engaging in for yourself? And how can you put that same amount of importance, if not more importance, on those behaviors versus those numbers that we're married to on the scale?
Yeah, that's a really great takeaway for our listeners. And I'm going to invite our listeners to ask themselves, right? Like, what are you really chasing, right? Weight loss or wellness?
Mm,
And what's it going to look like to care for yourself without judgment or these shortcuts, right?
yeah.
Because the truth is, health doesn't come in one size, a number, or one prescription. It comes from building a life that aligns with your values, your body, and your vision of what well being looks like for you. So, for our listeners, whether you're on a med, breaking up with the diet culture, or just figuring it all out, remember your worth is not measured by the scale. We need to focus on healing and habits and do it in a way that lasts.
Mm. Absolutely. And just be kind to yourself through the journey too. Like, we are often our own worst critics. And if we can teach ourselves how to be as supportive to us as we would for someone we care about, a loved one that expresses a same desire that we have, like, that's going to change the game too. Is learning how to be your own cheerleader, learning how to coach yourself through those inevitable setbacks, and really being there to comfort and support yourself through the challenges instead of getting down on yourself and beating yourself up.
Melissa, thank you so much for being here and discussing these super hot topics right now. If you could please share three fundamental pillars that contribute to your well being.
Oh, yes. So
We know you have six.
I know. I'll narrow it down though. Yeah. Number 1 is actually my sleep. Sleep is like the foundation for me because if I don't have a good night's sleep, it's likely to kind of mess with my day the next day. And if I have a glorious night's sleep, I feel unstoppable the next day. So sleep is kind of my non-negotiable there. The second thing is setting and tracking my goals. So like I mentioned earlier, I tend to be more focused on process goals, which are those behavior oriented ones to help me achieve my long-term outcome goals. Like an example would be that, I want to achieve 20 military style push-ups by the end of this year. So I'm focused on doing, little weekly sets of push-ups that are modified and inclined to be able to build up to that. So setting and tracking our goals, because what gets measured gets managed. The third one would be social support and accountability. So it's funny because I feel like I can let myself off the hook with anything. I'm like, "Oh, maybe I don't need to go to the gym today or do my workout." But if I have a group that I'm checking into as well for my own accountability, because coaches have coaches too, like, I am more likely to show up so that way I can share like, "All right, guys, I didn't wanna do it, but I did it." And that's one of the things that I've also seen in my group coaching membership, the Changemaker Collective, is like we all rally together to support each other. So that would be my 3rd one, is social support and accountability.
Oh, those are great. Melissa, can you share a little bit more about how our listeners can connect with you, your book, and I think you have a discount as well for Sophia Health guests.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the easiest place to find me is on my website at healthylivingdoesn'thavetosuck.com. You can also follow us on Instagram at healthylivingdoesn'thavetosuck. So, yes, the group coaching and the virtual fitness studio, you can get 50% off of your first 3 months.
Well, thank you. And thank you so much for being here and sharing all of your wisdom on lifestyle medicine with our listeners.
Thank you so much, Riley. It's been a pleasure. I appreciate you having me.
Thanks so much for listening. This has been Sophia Unfiltered, a podcast by Sophia Health, the #1 marketplace for health and wellness. Find services, classes, and products from the top health and wellness providers. Book an appointment or join live classes now. I'm your host, Riley Reese. If this episode resonated with you, we'd love to hear about it in the comments section of your favorite podcast provider or with a 5-star rating. Let us know what your biggest takeaway from this episode was, or share it with someone you hope to inspire. Join us again next time for more real conversations, stories, and insights that help empower you with the knowledge and inspiration needed to transform how we care for ourselves.